Hi, this is Laura and Robert with the Final Phoenix podcast. And today we are going to talk about the art and sciences of business and marketing. Robert, why don't you just say hello? How are you doing today?
Hello, how are you doing today? My favorite day, Wednesday, because we get to do our podcast. It's exciting. So here I am, ready to go.
Awesome. Awesome. So, one of the things that inspired me or us to talk about this is um, somehow Robert and I were on the same page and we were coming at this topic from different angles. So I see a lot of my clients really struggling with either the creative side of business or marketing or the scientific side of business or marketing and vice versa, essentially. So they will be nourishing their creativity, but not really applying what's necessary on the scientific side, or they will be too much in that analytical mode to where they're not really exercising their creativity. So, not only is it important for us to know where we are and to know the difference, but to kind of blend that yin and yang of both. So, that's what we're talking about. Robert, why don't you just go ahead and hit us off and tell us about your thoughts about the yin and yang of the science and business of business and marketing from your perspective?
Well, from my perspective, it's kind of just what's happened to me and what I can see sometimes other people get caught up into it. So there's different modes of operation, right? There's sometimes when you're in the analytics, that's numbers, that's uh, facts. It's a different part of your brain than the creativity part. And some people probably have the ability to go back and forth and not even realize they're doing it. The realization when we were talking to about this on the weekend was that I came to was a simple fact that I'm often in an analytical environment trying to creatively, creatively, and it's not conducive. I don't work that way, and I don't think a lot of people I know work that way either. And we have a tendency to be comfortable in one or the other, but there's definitely a time for it. And what I realized, what I was doing, one project that I've been on my um, to-do list for, I think about a little over a year now. I was getting into it, doing the analytical things, hooking up the CRM, doing my thing, and then it comes down to where I have to write some headlines, and it was stopping me. But on the surface of it, when you were there, I didn't know that's what it was doing. Okay, so it was pulling me out of um, my analytic to get to my creativity because I'm just, I can't do an analytical headline. I don't think it will appeal to people, and yeah, it doesn't appeal to me. So I didn't realize it, but as soon as the system pulled me out of that, I started spinning my wheels, and I wasted a lot of time, even a couple of months of getting frustrated. And then we talked through it, and I was like, oh, that's what I'm doing. And I think you just said, well, why don't you take your time to write the headlines before you get to that section? I'm going, yeah, that sounds like something I should do. But the problem is when I was doing it, I didn't realize that section was coming up. So I think this is a super important topic because as soon as I understood what I was doing, nothing really changed, but everything did. And I'm kind of excited to get back into it and set up my uh, advertising and to get into that. And before I was completely dreading it. I didn't even want to talk about it. I was getting frustrated even when we started talking about it. But I bet you, I was just wondering, that stopped me for months. How many other people uh, say the real creative types? Let's go with this the other way. The real creative types sit down to do a Facebook ads campaign, or they have to set up a funnel or something. That doesn't take creativity. It takes a system and an outline and to get it up, then come in and do the creativity, right? And I'm wondering how many people get stuck on setting up a funnel, and they're very creative and they're like trying to figure out the colors, they're trying to figure out the fonts, they're trying to figure out what picture goes with that, the size, and when really what they need to do is just get through it and get it done and then come back and put the spice in it. At least that was my take. It was actually a pretty big thing. Is that kind of what our talk is going to kind of
Yeah.
teach us how to balance back and forth on that?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. One of the things I like to say is just knowing where you need to be. So when we are exercising our creativity, for example, we are we're expressing ourselves, right? We're sharing what we know and we're teaching what we've learned or a lot of that comes with course correction or course creation, and also in business, just how can we, dive deep into our creativity and our knowing and our guidance and that aspect of us that is, all knowing and the space that comes from your heart where you're like, this is what I want to bring out into the world, right? And then there's the more scientific side of like, okay, organizing that and then actually putting it out into the world through exercising your creativity and some very common scientific aspects in business and marketing, like psychology, for example, and human behavior and such. So yeah, that's exactly what we want to do. Is what I want to recommend people is to just kind of know where you're at. Are you in the creative space of creating a product or creating a program? And then, where do you need to shift and move into that more analytical, scientific mind? Because if we don't know which mindset we need to be in, we tend to get really frustrated, or we tend to just be in one more than the other. And sometimes it's balancing the two, the yin and the yang individually as as an entrepreneur, as a soulpreneur, or finding the right people to help us learn one side or the other or both. I help my clients with both. Um, so yeah, it's like I said, it's not only knowing, but it's like, how can we nurture both of those aspects of us? So that's what we're kind of going to talk about today.
Do you think that I think this, and that's why I'm kind of excited about this, was because little shifts in your consciousness makes big shifts in the world, right? So do you think there's a lot of people that are say they are one side or the other, and when they start doing, they decide they have a message that they want to get out to the world, and maybe they're super creative and they start going down that path, and then all of a sudden there's a time where you got to get stuff done, where you got to be less creative, and it since they don't realize that's happening, they spend too much time creating and not enough time promoting, maybe. And
Mm.
maybe the other way around happens exactly the same way. Somebody's really good at that, but when it comes down to, I know myself personally, I always just think I have to do everything myself, which got served me, but I would get to the point to where I would get back then I'd use WordPress. I would get everything kind of done and updated and doing that. But then I would spend 48 hours just trying to align a picture because that's a creative aspect. I know I've worked with you a lot on different um, artistic things, and we use Canva a lot. That's one of the tools. And you'll create a document or a photo or something, and you'll do it within minutes compared to my hours. Now, I'm not saying that I can't do it, but I'm just saying that there's different modes, and then some days I can do it in a couple of minutes too. And I'm just wondering if you think that a lot of people might have a tendency to be overly strong in one of those areas and think that it might translate over. Like I sometimes think that when I'm in analytical mode, that I can continue right and blaze right into the creativity mode. And I know for a fact I personally can't. Is it your experience that you think that people have a tendency to? I mean, are we generalizing? And is that right?
So absolutely. So my story, and my story, is that I'm a very creative person. I love to paint. I love to create art. I'm an artist. And I started when I first started in business, I was very creative as to what I put out in the world and how to share what I was doing. And, luckily, the first business that I created by myself, it was a good product. And I didn't realize that I had somehow orchestrated the scientific part by it being such a good product, but I had already fallen into a niche and I really didn't even have to market myself because I had already unknowingly done a lot of that. But after I closed that business, I realized that, let's create a product. And Robert knows this story. I created a product and I was pretty sure that as long as the product was good, it was going to sell itself. And that's not what happened. And I was very creative at putting the product together. We need to emphasize, we need to use our creativity because that's where the God spark is. Like that's where what we're meant to create and our ability to create comes from is from that God spark. And there's so much that we can do and there's so much good stuff that we can bring into the world that if we're not exercising our creativity, then we're doing a disservice, right? But it didn't matter what I created because I didn't know how to sell it. I was like, I know this is a good product. And sure, maybe if I just walked down the streets and handed out my card and did some one-on-one, stuff in our community, I probably could have made some headway. But when it came to the online world, it was like there was no way that it was going to sell itself, no matter what I did, because I wasn't in line with that analytical part. And absolutely, I do agree. I do see people who are in that analytical state and their products don't end up being very good because they haven't exercised the creativity. So I wouldn't say that. I do think that most people are heavily in one or the other, but it really does take that middle ground of here's my creativity, this is what I'm bringing into the world, and here's the science that's going to sell it.
I also think that I'm just, thinking back. It's also what I think gets people in trouble is the thought process is that they sit down to do their blueprint. They sit down to do their funnel, whatever words you guys want to use, the advertising campaign, the lead magnet, whatever it is. And that they got to call on to that a little bit of that analytics. How much money do you want to spend? How much money do you want to make? How much are you going to pay for this? And I think they go into that, say they go into that with a creative mindset, not realizing that they have just the car in the wrong gear. They're going in reverse, but they could go forward, but they don't know that because they don't know, they've never done that. They don't even know they're up against that. So what they end up doing, and this is what I think is a bit of a mistake for a lot of people, is they start thinking they can't do it. So this is where I've got myself in trouble. Then they go to somebody else that says, yeah, I can do that for you. No problem. And I'm not saying that there aren't people out there that can. I've got a lot of help from people like that. But I'm not going to be very good at judging that when I'm in my creative mindset and I can't seem to get the analytics done. And somebody pops in and says, I'll take care of that for you for $500 a month. And I'm like going, oh, my prayers are answered finally. But since I don't even know what they're doing and I don't even know what part of the brain is active, unless you happen to find the right person, I think people fall into that trap. And I think that's why a lot of people don't get their products out there. Instead, if they could just tell themselves, say, okay, this is a different part of my brain. I got to learn this and turn it off, turn that part where they have to put their signature on everything. Okay. So this is the way I used to be. I would get a product or I could create something and then I would have to change it all. So it's all 100% me when really some of it was already done. It was already legal to use. And why would I have to reinvent the wheel? But I reinvented the wheel to the point to where I ended up with a car with only three wheels. And I got too tired, too exhausted, and I would go off. I would renew my energy and I would come back. That product was gone because I was all bored of it and I would start again and I would find out that, by the way, I have a lot of three wheel cars hanging around my place just because of that. So I think if we could talk a little bit about how to know that's happening, because I think a lot of people they think, oh, I'm not creative, I can never do that. And that's the other side of it. They can get all the stuff built and then somebody else says, oh, I'll do that for you. And you can't even judge somebody's work. Like I can honestly, if I got something I need to create, I know where Laura could create it quicker if she's in that right mindset. Or I could take my 4 hours and do it, or she could do it in 15 minutes. And whether I like it or not, at least it's a start. I can go that route now. If I want to spend 4 hours, I do it. But she spends 15 minutes, gives me three options. And I look at that. I'm better off to know which option to pick, if any of them. Where before, I would either like it or not like it. Now I kind of understand it. But here's the other thing. I also can appreciate it and I understand how much work goes into that now. So I'm not taking it for granted at all. I'm going, wow, that's brilliant. That would have took me 4 hours. We've got it done in 15. Woo woo. Let's celebrate. So
Yeah.
how do we teach people how to get out of their, like, how do they know when they're at what point, what comes up? I now know what comes up with me because we talked about it for like 4 hours. So I now know when that comes up. I'm so interested. I want to get in there and do it because I want to see if that wall comes up again, because I have a strategy now. When that wall comes up, I think I can move the wall over and stop banging my head against it. I think I haven't improved because I haven't really applied this strategy. But what I do know is a lot of projects that I had in my head, courses for my schools and stuff are following into place all of a sudden. Things that I was like not too excited about I'm getting super excited about it. I'm starting to see a need, I'm starting to see a problem, and I'm starting to know that I have a solution. Before, it was like, oh my gosh, how am I going to do that? I got to transfer over from Teachable to school. Oh boy,
Yeah.
that's going to be, oh. So, what can we do to help people kind of understand that that's where they're at? It's normal, but here's how to get out of it.
Well, what I like to, I have a few different thoughts around this. One is, we want to encourage flow. We want to encourage a flow state because it's in the flow state that, time kind of disappears and our creativity comes out and we're having an amazing time doing whatever it is that we're doing. And that's a sign for me that I am in my creativity. And with practice, I'm able to pull some of the analytical things into my space and apply creativity to that. I know that sounds kind of strange, um, but the flow state is a good sign of of being in a creative state. You're having fun, you feel expressive and expansive. And then oftentimes I will take this creative state and I'll move into a more analytical mode and try to apply analytical things from a creative state. And that's where we usually hit overwhelm. It's because we know some of the steps that we need to accomplish, but we are like not sure how to do it because it actually functions different, right? Like our flow state is more of like a it's a different chakra. It's a different part of your energy system that you're exercising, but bringing something like that into form is you're grounding it, right? You're taking actions, you're taking precise actions to create to bring something that you created into physical. So I do see that a lot of people hit overwhelm or overthinking or um frustration where they are trying to be in one state and they're in the other state, if that makes sense. Another thing is, oh, did you want to say something?
No, that makes a lot of sense. I just keep thinking back. If somebody wants to get an idea of kind of what that feels like, um, I'm doing my Google AdWords, and they need to learn how to make this stuff easier. They have all these analytics, and I know some people love it and stuff, but I really don't need to know all that. But I'm going through it, and I'm clicking the buttons, putting my website up, doing my thing, and then it hits. Please add 15 headlines, and they are putting that in an analytical area where my brain is structured on click this button, add this code to your website, do this, do that, do that. I'm not in the mode of, hey, I can write some brilliant headlines. And this is part of my story. So every time I went to did that, I just created some really crappy headlines, and I just couldn't. They were stupid and they didn't work and they didn't feel good. And then I took that feeling to the next section, which was create 4 descriptions. I'm thinking, come on, Google, what the heck do you get us doing all this push button stuff? And then all of a sudden you want us to be creative right in the middle of when we should not be being creative. And that I didn't realize that was happening. So there is a kind of an art and a science to this stuff, and you got to know which part is which. So, like what you said was good advice. Create the headlines first, and then when I go there, and my insight was, wait a minute, I can stop right now because it remembers where I'm at, and I can go off, work out, go for a run, and then I can sit down and write those headlines when I'm in a good state, and then I can come back and start again. That's not what I was doing for 3 months. What I
Mm.
was doing was powering through it the way people think you have to, and wasting life energy and everything.
Mhm.
So I think realizing which state you're in, like, are you in a flow state? How do you get somebody out of a flow state, right? You can do that pretty easy, right? Start getting him to think about the future, start getting him to think about the past. I don't know, just ask them a question, and they pull themselves out. But how you get into that, and what does that mean? So if you have a product you're trying to get out, I think you're going to be on one end of the scale or the other. I don't think you're going to be in the middle. If you are, great, you can go, but I think you're going to be either overly creative or maybe over analytical. And that's different for different projects, right? So
Yeah. Eh,
you just got to, I guess, knowing where you're at. I think, how do you know? Okay, I'll ask you a question here, because I didn't know I was in an analytical mode trying to be creative. Right now, I think that's a pretty silly comment. I'm like, going, how could you not know that? But if you asked me separately, I would have been able to tell you, yeah, you can't write headlines analytically. You can fill in the blanks, sure, but I've done that before. You should hear the headlines. They just don't ring true. You have to later. You have to come back and fill them. You have to come back and get your say that's not a very creative headline. I need to change that.
Yeah.
But how do you do that? How do you know you're in one and you have to go to the other? What are your cues?
So my cues is and it's not so much like this anymore because I feel like after you just get used to noticing where you are, you can shift. However, I do still have experiences where I get stuck, and when I'm stuck and something just isn't working, that's where I don't have the right combination of the creativity versus analytical, or I need to be in only one or only the other. And I do find that if I'm like in a full on creative mode and I'm writing Facebook ads, or publishing Facebook ads, they just don't work because I haven't applied that analytical aspect. But I feel like, for one, to identify it is it just won't work. You'll feel stuck, and it's because we're not using the right part of our energy system. And the way that I get out of that is I just look back at one thing at a time, just one step. And then I ask myself, is this more of like an analytical how to aspect, or is it a creative? Is this missing something that I need to kind of infuse some new energy into it? And I like to use writing a book as an example here because I've read some really analytical scientific books, and they just read kind of like, Chat GBT would write them, or hard to read, right? But when we write a book, we aren't really analyzing the content, hopefully at the beginning. We're just kind of letting it flow and letting it come out. Same comes when we make a video. And then after we make a video, we'll edit the content. And then after we write a book, we'll edit the content. But when we're trying to do all of that at the same time, that's where the overwhelm happens too, as well. So I love to recommend, like, create your product and then edit it to make it better. And then you kind of go back and forth through that creativity and analytical mode. But I kind of want to shift the conversation back to business and marketing because I taught a 90-day course where I was guiding some pretty green entrepreneurs, meaning like they came to me not having a niche, not knowing hardly anything about marketing, and I guided them through a 90-day course to create, pick a niche and create a product and then some. So that was a combination of that creative aspect plus moving them into the more analytical scientific aspects of business and marketing and how to apply some of that stuff. And I did notice that they got stuck right when they switched, because they're like, and then they got stuck in the analytical mode instead of moving like back and forth from creativity to analytical. They would just really get struck in the analyzing. And then, I like to say, what's your next step? Do you need to be in like a scientific analytical mindset? If you're feeling overwhelmed, then chances are you need to move back into creativity. But I wanted to go over some of the aspects of, business to kind of guide individuals who are, who have a business or who are creating a business, and just differentiating the two. So one of the programs that I have is more around like igniting your calling and being of service to humanity and to yourself. Because of course, when you're creating something and teaching it, you're also growing yourself as well. And that's a very creative process. So um it's how you kind of dig deep and say, what does my vision for my life look like? What do I want to bring to humanity? And I feel like that is just such a creative, nurturing, internal process that a lot of people, marketers especially, they'll teach the like more of like a scientific approach to it, like niching. They'll say, "We'll just pick a niche," and that can be helpful. But when it comes to niching, we're really looking for our life's work, right? We're looking on being our best version of ourselves and helping in the ways that are aligned. But when we're looking at it through a scientific or analytical lens, then we keep tripping over that, um, those the language and the analytical scientific aspects of you know choosing a niche, etc. So does that sound familiar, Robert, when
Oh
people are
yeah,
like told pick a niche and it's like such an
yeah.
analytical process,
Actually,
but
actually, I have done courses, and the courses were actually really good. But I went in with an idea. I think I want to do this. I want to create this course. And then they automatically, and this is not bad. This is not a bad thing. It's actually a good thing. But again, if you don't know what's happening, it can create a lot of problems. So the first thing they do is that they'll say, okay, let's check and see if anybody out there even buys that product. Okay, now let's talk about who buys it. How much do they buy it for? What's lacking? And by that time, I'm so off of even the product that I wanted to create that I'm starting to, and I don't realize it's happening. So I'm starting to create something I didn't even want to create because there's a potential of making money. Now, I do know there's some people out there that will go out there. They love marketing and they will market anything that they'll do that because the creativity is in selling a product and they don't care what the product is. I don't think that's our audience. I don't think that's what we're talking about at this point. I think our audience has something they want to get out in the world. And then sometimes, these people that actually have the know-how will start telling you how to do some research. And if you're not solid on that yet, if you're not firm and you're not there, you can get misguided and not misguided, redirected down a path because there's 5 other courses that are similar to yours, but they do this, so I'm going to shift to do that. And I guess I'll use like in the martial art business. Let's say I set out to do a women's self-defense course that you could do at home, 6 or 8 week course. Sounds kind of fun. I probably will do that. Well, let's go out and find out if there's anybody paying for that. Let's go out and do the numbers. And then I'm going through this. Then pretty soon I'm down and I'm finding out that a lot of people are buying how to lose weight with aerobic kickboxing. This is not something I'm really interested in right now, but there's more of those out there. I potentially could make the money. And since it does link a little bit, I feel like I'm on the right path. And then 3 or 4 weeks into it, I'm starting to do the filming and I'm going, I don't want to kick a heavy bag with a loud music and lose weight. In fact, actually, I'm trying to gain weight. This is not where I want to be. And unfortunately, you put a lot of work into that and a lot of energy, you start doubting yourself a little bit. So I think what you said some things that are really powerful. I've been there and done that where and it made total sense when I was doing it. It's like, what they'll tell you is you don't want to be first. It costs too much money to educate the people. And all that advice is real. It's real. But you need to know that if your product is what you want to get out there, you can utilize that knowledge, but be careful because it can pull you off of your own messaging and you can start creating a product that you don't care. And we both talk to people that have, and we know people that have a lot of money isn't an issue, right? What an issue is they're not happy. They're doing something and making money, but they want to do something
mm-hmm.
else and they don't know how to transfer, right?
Yeah, and
We were talking about that this weekend. It's like, well, what's the first stage? Is it the money or the happiness? Because you in that scenario that I'm thinking about, it doesn't. You can have both. Don't get me wrong, but they can't right now. So they need to choose, or they're getting neither. And it's just super
exactly.
interesting.
Yeah, and that's why what you want to create, what you want to bring into the world, your experience in this life so far, and what you can help with is something that only you can do, and that's why it's so important when we're picking a niche, as they have kind of coined that term. You really are just looking for your life's work, and your life's work isn't necessarily something else that someone else has created all the time. It might be to help or assist in that. But for most of us, especially, those that I call soulpreneurs, it's something that only we can bring into creation. And it comes automatically with prosperity, and it automatically comes with happiness, and it automatically comes with the financial freedom and time freedom and everything that we're looking for. So that creativity is necessary when deciding what to bring forward. So, but moving on a little bit, We
Can I
also,
can I give a
yeah,
live example of that though?
yeah, go ahead.
I was told by somebody that's really well known in the field, and his information was dead on. But he said I should change my messaging to martial when we're talking about the kids' martial arts to boys between the ages of 6 and 13, because that was my story. That's what was super powerful to me. That's what got me into it. But I'm listening to it, and it doesn't mean that you don't sign up, girls between that age, but the messaging all has to be congruent, and it's congruent with the story that I started for. And I had a resistance to it, and I didn't know why, but I'm like, I don't. I understand what he's saying. That is my story, but I'm like, it didn't feel right. And then I was in my school looking around, and I'm like, wow, it doesn't feel right because 60% of my students are female. Well, and I think that they need to know it. And I think that there's a need for that. And it just, so that might be my story, but it wasn't what I was trying to do. And if I would have followed that advice, I'm sure everything would have worked out fine. But something in me was saying, you're going the wrong direction. So his advice was really good because, again, my story aligned with it, but it really wasn't what I was even trying to do. Does that kind of make sense? So here's a well-meaning person who really knows what they're doing and told me the right thing, but it really wasn't the right thing. And I'm glad I didn't follow it. Okay. Because
Yeah.
I wanted to help a different group of people.
Yeah, and we go back to the gut feeling. And one of the things Robert said earlier is as we get really good at this, moving back and forth between the creativity and the analytical and the art and the science, and we're blending it where it is meant to be blended for us specifically, we can kind of know when to follow a gut feeling and when to apply something that, somebody taught us from the outside. But until we have exercised those abilities, we really don't know. So it really is like a muscle. You get good at both of those and then you switch back and forth. But speaking of messaging and avatars, that's in the marketing world, we talk about an avatar or a target market, um, and messaging, and in reality we can look at that from a creative aspect and say, okay, who are these people that we want to help, that we're best at helping, and that are aligned with needing what we have to offer. I mean, really, that's all it comes down to. And then when we get more into messaging, we can use our creativity, but then apply the scientific, or some of the psychology around what's the best way to say this in the shortest amount of words that's really going to get the attention of the people that we're trying to attract, right? Because if it's not clear and if it's not to the point, then we could be missing out on a lot of helping a lot of potential people. Which brings me to the thought about, like, chat GBT. If chat, one of the reasons I love chat and AI is it's, come to the surface these days is because it does help me get out of that creative mindset and into more analytical, just by giving me ideas. It almost will help me shift the mindset just by me reading the framework or very stern, outline of what it says. I'm like, oh yeah, well, I'm trying to create this from this mindset, right? And that's why I'm confused and I'm not coming up with anything. It's because I need to be straight and to the point so that it's very bold and very strong, right? And if you love to utilize chat GBT, that might be a sign that you really like to be in that creative space. And again, we need to be in that creative space to utilize our power. So much of our power, if not all of it, comes from that creative space. And then, of course, learning how to get it out on the market and marketing is, that science. And there's a little bit of art in there too. But the other thing I want to talk about is when we create a product. I know I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but I guide students through what I call a purge or a creative purge, which is a solely creative experience where you're putting everything that could possibly be put into a product and just having a lot of fun being in flow and putting all the possibilities together and really looking at it and almost like a free painting, right? Or a free artistry kind of way. Like you're just splashing paint on the wall and you're just kind of seeing what comes out and then, you know, applying some of that analytic aspect to organize it and then put it into a package that is deliverable and easy to understand and, you know, removing everything that doesn't need to be there. So I feel like when it comes to all of our products, especially those in, you know, courses, online courses, services, or coaching, or just kind of depends on if you have a program or not. But especially in like the schools, Robert, what do you feel like when it comes to like what if we just had a bunch of random stuff in our martial arts programs, right? And it wasn't organized in any sort of way.
Oh, I've done
Um,
that.
yeah, we have to organize. We need to use our creativity and purge it out to put the movements and everything together. But then we have to apply some of that analytic organizational
Yeah,
skills, right?
it doesn't work even for the people that say it works. They say, "Oh, I love that we do something different all the time. I love that," and it's like later you don't see that person ever again because nobody really likes chaos like that. There needs to be some sort of order to something, but you have to start with that chaos. So I started. Funny that you brought that up because I started yesterday with a class plan and coming up with a class plan and reorganizing it. Something I've had to do for a long time for beginners. I just haven't got around to it because I teach at a higher level. But my teaching at a higher level is not serving my audience. So I sat down. It took me 2 hours, which it should have because I have done this for 30 years, right? But it took me 2 hours just to kind of get everything down to one single piece of paper. And then it only took me about 5 minutes to put that in a logical order because I do it all the time. And then I went out and did my class. And I'm not going to tell you that it was a 5-star class, but it definitely wasn't a 1 or 2 star. Everybody got something out of it, including me. We all got the workout, and I followed my plan. And I changed it a little bit at the end when I realized that the last drill I had was a little too complex for my audience. I would have never been able to do that without that organizing part of my mind. But I got to tell you, again, going back to the talk, I went from the creative to the organizing, and that's why it took me so long because it was really hard. I started thinking about all these beautiful drills we could do, all these, you know, I'm an artist. I wanted to get to that part. And then I kept coming back to, but you're working with 6 new students who don't even know how to hold the paintbrush. So why are you confusing the heck out of them? So yeah, I just lived that the other day. And I was thinking you said something I want to go back to a little bit. You were working, and because I was on a couple of those calls with the group that you were working with. And I think the group that you were working with were extreme creatives. And I think that they had that creativity going like crazy. What their struggles were when you were trying to get them to good, let's now focus on these 3 things that you have to do so that you can get your creativity out in the world. And it was like, and I think that's one thing I think that kind of the could have been the opposite, right? And I feel like if they were all analytical, your course would have been exactly the opposite because they really needed what you were teaching them at that time. Because I could just see it when we were talking with them. It's like, wow, you guys got it all, but you don't even know how to get it out of the world. So I think that you do have to travel back and forth. And it's like, okay, so I've been talking about my curriculum with the beginners for a while because I usually don't work with beginners. And you've been hearing me the frustration, and you're just like, just sit down and do it. You've done this hundreds of times. You're like, what's the problem? But until we talked about creativity and analytical, and so I knew where I was at. I wouldn't have been able to get it done. And I knew I was waiting for something. I didn't know what it was waiting for, but it literally, even though it took me a couple hours, I literally sat down yesterday and was able to do it. I didn't have a headache. I didn't, and I've been moaning about this for a couple of months. Is it perfect? No, it got me through yesterday, but it also set the tone for the rest of the week, for the rest of the month. Now I have to get down and really think. And this is the fun part for me. Now that I've got my outline, I can start getting creative. So knowing where you're at the time that you know it. So what do you think, Laura, is like for me, the stumbling block, for me, the big aha moment was realizing that I'm in an analytical mode trying to be creative. I think that's huge. I think I would have paid for that, right? If somebody could just come in and it would have, I would have gave them a couple $100 if they could have told me, don't be creative when you're analytical. And I know that sounds kind of silly, but you've talked to a lot of people different group of people that I talk to, even though it is the same thing in the art, by the way. Now that I'm thinking about it, don't get me on that. So what do you think I'm kind of curious because I don't know. Most of your people, are they analytical or are they creative? And are those creative people looking for analytical answers? Are those analytical people looking for creativity? Or are they not? I mean, I don't know if we're off topic. You can give me
No,
bottom line.
we're not. I think that most of my people are so when I've done groups where they come in and they haven't even burst the bubble of their creativity yet, and they're not really in an analytical space either. They just don't really know how to bring what their vision is or what's in their heart. They just don't really trust their creativity. They haven't exercised it enough to see the benefits that it brings. And so I do attract different kinds of people. So one is that person that hasn't even really stepped in the analytical aspect of it because they haven't even really, burst the bubble on their creativity, so they don't have anything to analyze really. And then there's also the people that tend to be so far analytical that they're in a constant state of stress or frustration or overwhelm or overthinking because when you really love learning stuff, you will get so many different messages from different people, all telling you to do different things. And then you're trying to apply that. Even though you had some version of a product before, they generally will put it together from a space of analyzing as well. So it's not even really 100% theirs. And then I have people that are very analytical and big pictured. So they're moving from an image that they have, but they have yet to even tap into their creativity. So I really feel like I do have people from one side or the other, and we're just working on bringing those two together. So what you said made me think about, when we were putting together programs, because some of us are big picture to detail, and some of us are detail to big picture. So I love that Robert mentioned that because I'm more detail to big picture while I'm learning something. So I may learn all the details and then put a framework around it or a structure around it in order to teach it. While some people may put a structure around something in order to teach it and then really dive deep into what the details of all that is. And I think it really depends on what you're creating and what you're bringing forward. Um, but I kind of want to tune I hope that answered or I hope that
Well,
was clear.
it does, but I want to cap that off and tell people that that's why they have to uh, when they're getting somebody that's they're coaching, right? When they'll have a tendency to lean toward a coach that has the opposite viewpoint of them. And sometimes that can be a problem because if the coach doesn't realize that they're two different things, the coach will go on doing like any teacher would. This is my way, so it's the right way. And if you don't realize that that's why you hired that person, you might end up getting some issues that you probably don't need to have. And you could help your coach help you by saying that, right? So if I need help from you, I have learned how to frame my question so that you know what part of the brain I'm in. If I can't get creative, I'll tell you, and then you help me get creative. If I need an analytical part, and you're good at telling me I'm not in that mindset right now. But if we don't know that, we try to put a analytical answer solution on an artistic problem, and that never feels right. It never
Mhm.
goes right at all. So if the people are out there looking for help in an area, realize what they're looking for and understand who they're hiring, and they can best get the best work out of both, and it will help the coach out too.
Yeah, absolutely. And really, knowing, working with a coach that knows the difference is so important because I've hired or having a well-rounded someone who really nurtures your creativity and then maybe another person that emphasizes the analytical scientific stuff because sometimes that's hard to find in one person, right? But it is
Oh, there's nothing
possible.
wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with having. I have assistants, different people I go to. Like I have the people that help me with my CRM. They're very analytical. I don't go to them. I found out I don't go for them to, even though they have good advice, I just don't go to them for the artistic thing because it always will come down to their answer is always going to be, well, you just need to test that to see if it works for you.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
exactly.
so just, but I know that. So I go to somebody else for that.
Yeah, yeah. And just really kind of knowing what you need. Like, do I have all of these products and no way to sell them? Or do I have nothing really to sell, but maybe you have some of the knowledge of marketing. So, and I want to shift our conversation a little bit more to the analytical side because I do see now that I have guided students through the creativity phase and they do have products now and they've learned how to pull on from their creativity and create in that way. But there are some, scientific or analytical aspects that they need to learn too. And it's not that creativity isn't infused in all of these things, but it really is necessary when you're selling online because we absolutely have to know who we're talking to. So I'm just going to briefly go over some of the things that are not negotiable when we're sharing what we created. And the first thing I'm going to talk about is who's your market, who are you talking to, who do you love to work with, who are you wanting to attract, and then what is your message to them. So what is it that you're even offering them in a clear and concise way, like what is the result or the outcome or the benefits that you want to that they will be getting. Another thing is how you're going to reach these people, right? So we have to decide like what kind of media are we going to use, which social media is very popular for that. How are we going to reach them? And then what do we do after we put our videos or our blogs or whatever it is that we're creating and however we're reaching them is just one thing. The other thing is getting them off of social media because one of the things I preach is that you don't own your social media um, profile. You actually aren't really owning any of your videos. The social media platform can disappear at any moment and that is gone completely. So if you're using like a Facebook group or something as a funnel, Facebook shifts their product a little bit and then you've got to start over and you have nothing. Like if they got rid of groups or something or communities, so what is your lead capture system? How are you getting people off of social media and into your email box so that you can actually continue to share with them in a more intimate way? And then how are you converting these people into paying customers? Because when they're in your email, um, you are able to teach them more about your products and your programs and your services. And one of the things that I teach is that only 3% of people are even ready to buy from you right now, right? And then there's another 7% that may go in the next few days. And then there's like another 30% that are like, yeah, I want to buy from you, just not yet, right? And then the rest of the 40% or whatnot is just they don't care. So we need to be nurturing the people that do care and not just kind of throwing blanks in the dark all the time. And then obviously, you know, your product and your program and your service or your solution, what you're offering, the experience that you're offering is what they're paying for. And then, keeping them with you for a while, like customer value. And then lastly, how to continue that cycle in a way that, reduces your cost per lead and, like with referrals and such. So all of this is really like a lot of the analytical stuff that is infused with creativity. But without these steps, you're not really building a business. You're just wasting a lot of money. And I know, Robert, you and we've talked a lot about this. Just in the schools and building the businesses and nurture campaigns and all that. But what are your thoughts just about this analytical stuff? Because honestly, I can't do this very well if I'm in that creative mindset. So I know that I will use part of my day for creativity and part of my day for analytics and the scientific stuff of clicking buttons and putting all you know, the structures and the customer experience together basically. But what are your thoughts about this?
That's a lot. We could unpack
It is
that.
a lot.
Yeah, we could unpack that for a long time. But I think part of it is okay. So I think there's a few things here. I think sometimes people who would classify themselves as creative don't think that they can turn that on at will. So they don't think that they could schedule that. And I'm going to tell you, I used to think the same thing. Yes, you can schedule that. So having the first part of your day to being your analytics. Okay, so I know that when I wake up in the morning, I can actually, and it could be because I've trained myself to this, but I can pull my Facebook ads up. I can pull my Google ads up. I can go through numbers. My brain is not jumping places. It's like it's comfortable. That's in the morning. I know later in the day, I'll waste hours trying to do that. But I can write an ad, or I can write a bully proof kit. I can do a lot of things. So I think knowing that and scheduling it is not wrong. So saying, okay, I'm going to work till 10 o'clock on the push button stuff. And then from 12 to 1 o'clock, I'm going to write 5 descriptions that really describe my school. You may not feel creative when you're doing it, but I know from my experience, you come back the next day after it sits for a while, you'll have one or two brilliant things that you wanted to have if you didn't do it. So if people are in the mode of waiting for lightning to strike, I mean, how often does that happen? You're going to be waiting a long time. So I think that's pretty important. I think the overwhelm, you said something about, well, you did say a lot. Uh, Hitting the analytical part of it is for some people, especially creatives, I think that can scare them. And it doesn't need to scare them. I think what they need to do is get creative about it. So that means like you have to structure the analytical stuff in an analytical way to get your brain to understand the step-by-step process. And like I said, if Google asked me, I would say, stop making us come up with 15 headlines right after you've made us push buttons for a half hour. I mean, I'm in code now. I'm in like websites. I'm in DNSs. I'm in all sorts of stuff. And now you want me to even know I don't even know what I'm selling anymore. Google, thank you. But I think that that organizing it in such a way that tells them that they're in that mode, and then being able to close the book and being into the other mode. So what on analytics? You said so much there that I should have took notes. What's the number one thing? Just think about the people you've talked with recently, and stick with analytics. What's the one thing that they're struggling with? Maybe give me some context here.
Well, one thing I'd like to point out is when we're in a creative conversation type of space, or a creative space or a listening space, then that does sound like a lot, right? It really does. But in reality, it's not that complicated because we're not in the mindset to say, oh, it's like get out of bed, get dressed, put your shoes on, walk outside, go for a jog, come back, get in the shower. We don't really know what a lot of it means. So it sounds like a lot, but really it's not. But the most common things that I've seen is, man, I've seen a lot lately, but really it's lead capturing leads is really, I like to call that uh, creating small valuable solutions or small solutions, because really that's all we're doing. We can't put everything that we do out there and just hope to attract the right person, but we can put a small valuable piece of information out there in order to attract the person that's looking for us, because they'll download it, and then we do that ethical exchange of the email address for the download, and then we get to continue to give value to this person and educate this person, and make the experience positive for them. And I see a lot of people get stuck here. They're like, well, I don't want to do that. And it's like, fine. But if you don't, social media is owning all of the people that you're talking to. So if your account were to just disappear, which has happened to many people, they just wake up and their YouTube channel is gone. They have no email addresses and they are starting from scratch with rebuilding their business. So that's the most common thing that I'm seeing right now. But I feel like that's probably because of the market that I've chosen to work with right now didn't even have a product, right? So I walked them through opening that creativity and creating a product. And then now they're like, well, I did this, and they're just having a hard time turning on that analytical spot within them without having to judge everything that they're doing. They're putting a lot of their personal likes and dislikes. Well, I don't want to market and I don't want to send emails out there. You know what? It's fine. I used to hate marketing too. I used to think it was silly. I used to think that we didn't have to do anything, that it was a good product, it would sell itself. I used to think all these things that have proven themselves not to be true. But that's kind of where I see the challenge right now with the people that
So
I'm
okay,
kind of attracting.
So if we just speak on that a little bit, it's small solutions. You got to start with helping people first. You're
Hmm.
not going to get anything from anybody if you're not giving anything. And to think that it will all come together in one mega, like when you see somebody selling you a solution on Facebook or wherever you're seeing this social media, you're seeing the result. You're not seeing the work. You're not seeing everything that this. I mean, how many times have me and you've gotten things from marketers and we hit it and we get a 404 page and we're like going, wow, you just spent money on that? You didn't even test your workout. And I'll be honest, how many times have I done that? I just found out the other day that one of our links from our webpage sent somebody to a 404 page. I'm like going, wow, how long has that been going on? And somebody else has probably gone, geez, does this guy even know? So I think to answer to that, to get them out of overwhelm and stuff, is stop thinking about the huge end result that may or may not even be what you want in life. Start with some small solutions, and get your thoughts out there, and then get a way to get the people back. And that's not too hard. I mean, we could break that down to a really easy thing. Come up with a solution, whether it's a video, whether it's a PDF, whether it's a Kindle book, whatever it is. Start with something that's valuable, that you think is valuable. Create a funnel. Okay. Ask somebody, send it out there, ask somebody to give you an email address and you will send them to it. Now you have an email address and they're getting their, that sounds fair to me. Now, once you got that, you can go to the next step. See, we can make anything sound easy. Well, so what's the next step? Is you got to get a CRM. Oh,
Yeah. Well, you can do it. There's so many ways of doing it. But the next
sure,
step,
but
you really just want to make sure that you're nurturing these people, and you don't need a CRM to do that. I feel like a CRM is once somebody has exercised their knowledge and, in the business and marketing world a little bit, they will actually know why they need it and why it's beneficial.
well, there's a lot of people that just run their business off of one avenue. And no matter what, you always hear email is dead. And I'm thinking, really? I open email up 4 times a day. I wish it was dead sometimes, right? You got to be on TikTok. That's where everybody's at. Really? I haven't been on TikTok well, I just decided to do your course and I'm going to do it because I think I think it might work, right? You got to do YouTube videos. And I tried that. I have 4 YouTube channels and I put one video up. Guess it didn't work for me. So there are 1,000 answers out there, but ultimately, what you said is good. They first have to have a solution to give to somebody. And then to do that, they have to collect information from that person to fulfill it. And then they have to continue to help that person along. And you might only have, I mean, some people that are trying to break into this, your small solution might be the only thing you have right now. That's okay. Start with that. Whether you sell it or whether you just do it for free. If you can't break your small solution to other small solutions, then start where you're at and be happy with it and get some feedback and figure out how you can enrich that solution. You send out that, you get a lot of people telling you, hey, I really wish this was a video course. Well, now you have a little bit more information than you had before, right? And you can say, or like what you did with your group. You asked them, hey, what did we not cover? What did you guys wish that we would have? And some of them had some really great advice to you that you said, yeah, I think you guys need that. And some of them had some things that were specific to that one individual at that one time in their life. And you chose not to jump on that. So I think what you're saying is let's start with a small solution and then let's figure out how to get that to the market free, whatever,
Yeah, it
in,
doesn't matter. That's a
in
lead
exchange
magnet, right?
for, yep, in exchange for a email address. And then after you start getting an email address, you have to nurture them, which is a form of communication, guys. Just you have to send them valuable stuff. Um, Again, I think everybody that's listening to this can identify with this. How many people do you get emails from every day that's only trying to sell you something all the time? And do you open those every time? No.
Yeah.
Sometimes I do if I like the person, but after a while you're going, oh, what are they selling now? Now, if you really like them, you open that stuff. But I think there's a middle ground where if I have, okay, so I have the bully proof checklist. It's one of my small solutions. And I haven't cultivated the email list that goes with that small solution. So you can go to my webpage, you can sign up for it. I'll get your email. I'll send you the solution, and then you'll hear nothing from me. Crickets. That's sad. Okay.
Yeah.
Because I've just provided you with half a solution. I can't provide you with the full solution in a PDF. Nobody can. So I have a responsibility if I'm going here. I have a responsibility to now give you more because you asked for it. That's how I feel. So I know that and I will get around to it, but I had to start somewhere. So now my next step would be to start figuring out what type of emails. And here's the thing, my small solution, which is a checklist, is very good. I can take any one of those checklists and I could go out a long ways. And I think that somebody that needed that solution would open my emails. Okay. So I don't think this is difficult. I think overall, your big picture stuff that we're talking about can get people overwhelmed. But if they just
Yeah.
pick one thing and figure out how to give it out, and don't fall for this, don't, oh, nobody opened it. Like nobody, that might just be your headline. It just might be your, it might be that you're not, web page is even connected, right? Don't be jumping to conclusions. Just get your work out there. And if it doesn't work, get something else out there because you're learning a process when you do this. You're learning a process that is analytical. And once you learn that process, you can do it quick, right? So what really if this is still on the lines of what we're talking about, what technical stuff really overwhelmed you in the beginning that you don't even think about right now? I know what it is, but I'm going to curious if you know what I know.
Technical stuff. Well, it really is. So one thing I want to point out is that there's more steps than we think. We do really always see the end process on the internet. I used to think that I just make a profile on Facebook and I just stand up in front of the world and I'm like, okay, I'm a business owner now. And it's like, okay, I made a website. I'm a business owner now. And that's not the case. There is all of that, blood, sweat, and tears, and fun, and ups and downs, and challenges that, having a business online or brick and mortar, it comes with these challenges because we grow through those. So first, I like to say there's just a lot more steps that we see. So when we're moving into a space of like, let's create a lead magnet or a customer magnet, and then let's create a funnel, there's a lot of measurement points in there that we get to kind of dissect and put a magnifying glass on there and say, how is this actually performing and how can we optimize its performance? Those are things that I never even thought of. I just thought it was like, oh, just here's my product, I'm going to tell everybody about it. But it's like, no, these people don't know us, they don't know anything about us. Like, we know what it is, but we still have to share it and then continue the education and continue giving value. And I think the hardest part for me was how to do that, the buttons to push and how to how to do that in an analytical way, but also attach my creativity to say, okay, I sent out this email sequence. What from a customer viewpoint would I want to receive after, receiving this this customer magnet or this lead magnet? What would feel good for me to put out into the world and receive as an actual user of this? And then connecting all of those dots was probably the hardest part for me because it really does look, it's not simple. Well, let's say it is simple, but it's not really easy because there is a learning curve to it. So, but I want to shift now because we only have a couple minutes left. So I just want to shift now to really highlighting our conversation and first just start with saying, hey, know whether you're in a creative mindset, which is also like the art of business or marketing, or are you in an analytical or scientific mindset? And then, knowing that can help you out. And also knowing where your strength is for like the hour of the day. Are you more creative in the morning? Are you more analytical? Or where can you best use your time and your energy system to make the most progress? So knowing that about yourself is really key. And then just moving back and forth and allowing yourself and your energy system to do what it can do and not really forcing any of it, right? So if I'm in like a creative space all day, I'm going to take advantage of that. But if I'm in like an analytical space all day, I'm going to take advantage of that. So um, if you're not able to control it, just definitely take advantage of where you're at. And then also, I want to talk about, Robert, I want to briefly just talk to you about each aspect individually. So, when it comes to the art and science, or the art and the creative side of business, these are the things that I can think of, especially when it comes to like our spiritual growth and our expansion, as to like what that entails. So I know that storytelling, our deep knowing of where we should go next or what we want to share, anything that comes from your heart, the movement that you want to make or the change that you want to make in the world, the experiences that you want to give people, whether it be healing them, helping them, inspiring them, sharing your experiences, really just tapping into your genius and being in a state of flow, and following your personal and internal guidance as well. So, can you think of anything else when it comes to the creative art of business that I've left out, that or do you want to comment on any of those things, just to help people know, like, oh, this is where I'm at. I'm in this creative artistic aspect of what I'm doing. And can you think of anything or want to comment on any of those?
I think some of the I think sometimes people don't know when they're being creative until they step away and they come back and they look at some of the stuff that they've done. I have done things that I thought were just analytical and just I'm just doing them because I'm just in the mode. And sometimes you just got to get the work done, right? You just get the work done. If I got to write headlines, write headlines. But then I step away and I come back and I'm going, yeah, this is pretty good stuff. So I think there's a magic that happens when you're creating. And I think that you don't always necessarily know that that is actually happening when it's happening. So you can't discount that the time where you don't think you're being creative. Sometimes you got to just sit down and do the work. Like, so for example, I used to publish a lot of articles on martial arts back in the day when the internet and Google was easier to do that stuff with, right? And I remember sitting back reading this article going, man, this guy really knows what he's talking about. He really knows how kids operate. And then I read that the author was me, right? Now, the reason I say that is because when I wrote the article, I had to go back and look. It was just one of 12 articles I wrote on that topic. And then when I came back to it, I was like, wow, that's like genius. I'm like, I'm not telling anybody I'm a genius or anything, but for where I was at when I did it, I felt like I was just plugging away doing the work. When I came back and read it, I thought, man, I got everything right. But I don't know about the other 11 articles, and who cares? That's not it. So I think there is some magic there. And I don't think, what I've done before, I don't think you need to wait to be inspired. I think you just got to decide that that this is a creative side and I'm going to create. I got a course in me. I got a mini course in me. I got a video in me. I have a letter in me. I have a headline in me. And I'm not feeling the juices, but that's okay. I don't need to feel the juices. I'm going to channel this. I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to start. Like, I have to do things with a pen and paper, like when I write headlines. And then I come back and type them. That's when it becomes analytical for me. So I think, I don't know if I got off track, if I answered your question, but it's, you don't always have to wait till inspiration. I don't want people to wait for inspiration. They're not okay, there's the business, there's the stuff that you got to do every day, there's the stuff that comes out of you, there's the creative part that you're driving down the road and all of a sudden you see a sign and all of a sudden you realize that your colors on your website need to be a little bit there. That's going to happen no matter what. But you can also act as if and start creating that whenever you want. So we know that when we're the most creative, okay, and we know when we're not, and so we utilize those times because we figured it out. If somebody else hasn't figured it out, I think that they need to just artificially figure it out and just say, hey, mornings are my most inspirational time. I'm going to be working on my product, and then in the afternoon I'll work on my Kajabi site. And just that fact alone, I think will teach people how to be creative or how to be analytical. If I told you, Laura, if I told you that after this call, I'm going to bribe you with a cup of coffee and you're going to think, oh, this is great. And then I'm going to sit you down and see if you can help me create my website funnel for bully proofing kids because it's lacking something. I mean, you can think right now and you can say, okay, that's analytical stuff with creativity in there, but you actually know what I'm asking. I'm asking for some analytical. I don't need the creativity there. And if that's not the time you're going to be able to do that, since we work together enough, you'll be able to tell me no, or you can say, this is what I need first. I need 2 cups of coffee, right? So I think the fact that we know that, like when I ask you for help with anything, I know how to frame it to get the kind of help I need at the time. And you know how to answer me if you can't do it, right? You say, I'm not in that. I'm just like, I remember I asked you to do a, uh, a flyer for a, referral program or whatever, and you were in the middle of doing something with Kajabi, and you're like, I don't have the brainwidth for that right now, right?
Mm,
And I was like, why not?
yeah.
Obviously I didn't either, or I wouldn't be asking you. But then in retrospect, I said, oh, she's working on trying to figure out these 3 components. She ain't going to be creative all of a sudden at a drop of a hat. But that was a 30-second conversation that helped me get to the end because I realized that. I think what I'm trying to get at is that people don't have sometimes 2 people like me and you, right? They don't have
Hmm.
that. They have to be analytical, and then they have to be artistic, and they have to know which part is which, even though they cross bounds, right? Do you think that working with Kajabi is analytical, or do you think it's artistic?
It's analytical and actually all so it's basically analytical, but we do put our creativity in there when we're writing emails and stuff. So it is both. But I want to because we only have a couple minutes left, so I want to just talk about the things that are analytical when it comes to building your business. And a lot of this comes down to, we have creative principles, which I talk about in my Soulpreneur starter kit. And I'll also give some more information on that. But we have the analytical principles too, which is like in order to have a business, you have to have a product or a service that you're offering, right? But some other aspects of the analytics and the scientific stuff is the psychology around selling or really just nurturing. I don't really like the word selling because really what we're doing is we're offering something valuable in exchange for the energy of money. And it really happens quite automatically when we've gone through a lot of the steps of the nurturing of our customer. But anything that has to do with a website or buttons or a delivery system, pricing, product maps, product ladders, lead
Funnels,
magnets,
webhooks,
funnels,
email
webhooks.
lists,
Yeah.
nurture campaigns. That's pretty easy to figure out because they are pretty cold. They're kind of harsh. I mean,
Yeah.
you know when you're dealing with them because it's not warm and cushy and fun. It's like, okay, you got an hour, let's get it done. Okay, you got to
Yeah.
do this, go here, click here. So yeah, doing your ads, very analytical. Follow up, your follow-up is creative when you do it, but the follow-up itself is in 1 hour after they respond to an ad, they get a reminder of how to download it. And then they also, right after that, get an email because nobody looks at their text. And right after the email, they get a voice drop. That's
Mhm.
all analytical. What you put into those is creative.
Exactly. And really your conversions and how you're converting people from potential buyers to buying and streamlining and automating funnels,
All
all
your
of that stuff.
metrics.
Yeah,
All your
all of your
metrics.
metrics and your data points is exactly. And I really just found value in knowing like what kind of space am I in today? Can I do this? Can I do that? Am I going to do numbers today? Am I going to look at ROI? Or am I going to create another course, or am I going to create? And I really do feel like I kind of want to end this conversation with a couple things. One is that the best coaches and the best creative individuals and the people that have so much to offer in a creative way, they don't know how to market themselves. And I think that's part of why my passion has been like, let me teach these people how to get what they're doing out into the world because I've worked with some amazing coaches because that creativity is so strong and so prominent. But when it comes to marketing themselves, it's like crickets, like they don't know how to do it. So people don't know how to find them. And, um, you know, we want to get this work out into the world because it's going to help so many people. So I just want to say the best coaches that I know don't know how to market themselves very well, and that's what I want to help you do. So if you're someone who has a product or a program or a service, if you're a coach, if you have an online course, or if you're a teacher, I offer a what I call the Soulpreneur Starter Kit on my website. You can find that at www.lauraperry.com, and just go through the course because it'll help you understand some of the spiritual principles and the creative principles and walk you through the course creation process and give you some of the analytical aspects that you need to know in order to market your product. So, a lot of the conversions and sales and all that stuff really comes down to what is your product and how do you want to deliver it, right? So there's all of these analytical things, but I don't want to do a disservice to people and say, now that you did all this creative stuff, let me get you stuck in your head, right? So I've
Well,
learned how to differentiate between where people are so powerful and it is in that creative space. And now, the Soulpreneur Starter Kit will shift you through, okay, here's some of the actions that I need to take to get my products out into the market.
and it's not overwhelming. It's not a course that's going to get you bogged down into things that you may need to get bogged down to, but you need to get bogged down to them when you're ready. I mean, how many courses, I mean, we've taken, and they bog us down at the beginning with things that we really don't need right then, right? And it stops us from even completing. Your course doesn't do that. I like to say it's kind of grounding. It kind of says, here's all these pieces, and here's how you can think about it, and then this is what you got to do. And then there's sections that come up that you say, I need to move on that. And just because you know what section that is, you can find the information.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Robert, do you want to add anything else as we finalize other than, really just give yourself a break and let yourself be where your strength is for the day and, exercise both aspects of you and be gentle and let it unfold because although there's a dance between the feminine and masculine energies and being and doing and the yin and yang of both, there really is a balance that we come into after being in this, soulpreneur, entrepreneur, business, marketing world where it all makes sense. And really that just comes with practice and showing up and going through the motions and really not giving up and know that, what you're creating is bigger than anything that we can even think up. So, you know, taking, one step at a time, no matter what mode you're in, will help you decide where you're going at that moment. So, Robert, do you want to mention anything else before we sign
Yeah,
off here?
I think really, 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 because it's just what I'm on, is know which area you're at. And it's hard to switch. It's hard to go from analytical to creative like that. Okay. Until you kind of understand it. But so know which one you're at. But above and beyond that, understand that this is a process, this is a journey, and that you have to do what you got to do in the order that you've got to do it to get to the next step. And if you know that, it's going to be comfortable. So we went on that one hike up to the lake. And the review, do you remember the reviews of the hike?
Hmm.
I'm glad I didn't read them before, but what was one of the main reviews the guy said?
Just something about it being so rocky
Okay,
and steep.
so the
Yeah.
review was, this is a very rocky hike, and I'm like, what do you expect? Until I hit the part of the hike that goes straight up, and it was nothing but rocks. But out of that whole hike, that's what he had to say, right? I could see the end of that. I mean, I could see. So all I did was I looked straight down at my feet, and I made sure my feet were solid, and I made it to the end of it. We would have never got to the lake if we wouldn't have got through the rocks. That's just the fact. And we could have stopped anytime we wanted, which we did. So it was the rocks. I'm not going to say they were pleasurable, but they were. I wouldn't write a review about it. Man, this rock is
Yeah.
like somebody put rocks in front of them. But I'm telling you that your journey's like that too, but you don't know. So here's the cool thing. Laura knew what the end result of that hike was because she's done it several times. It was my first hike. I understood she was the guide. I knew that she knew what she was talking about. She described the vision good enough. We got to the halfway point. She said, this is only halfway. It's a beautiful view, but wait till you're at the top. And I understood that. I trusted her. I didn't think about getting lost. I didn't do any of that. I relinquished a lot of control because my guide was trustworthy. And I kind of had the whole picture. Sometimes we are all of that in ourselves. And it seems to be a little confusing for us, but it doesn't need to. You're going to have to get through it anyways. So my point is find a good guide, of course, but also go do it anyways. And whatever you're doing today is going to get you further, even if you scrap it. Just before we end up, how many solutions or lead magnets, Laura, have you done but never put to market just because you decided afterwards, yeah, you just either weren't into it or wasn't good enough or
Oh,
wasn't what you wanted? Tons, right?
plenty. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
plenty. To where I
Yeah.
was like,
But did it
nah, it
each,
just doesn't feel good. Let me do something
not
different.
each one of those help you get to the next?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
they really do, right?
definitely.
So you had to do those. What I'm trying to say is you had to do them. Now you might look at some of them, maybe not, but most of them you probably had to do, and that's par for course. I had to step on all those rocks. I didn't have to go write a
Mm.
review about it, but I needed. Well, now I'm doing a review. Do you
Mm.
guys want to know what a hike not to go if you don't
It
like
was
rocks?
backpacking to clarify a little
Yeah.
bit more
Okay.
backpacking.
So
Yeah.
I just want to let people know that the journey that they're on um, is their journey, and it's important that it resonates with them, and it's important that they do seek the help that they need, but that they don't relinquish their journey for somebody else's. There was no point in time that Laura would have let me take over that hike. It was my first hike. I would have got us lost. I would have, I even asked, what's wrong with that trail? She says, I don't know where it goes. Into discussion, into story. We're not going there. I'm like, oh, let's try it. Let's see. Let's get lost. Bad idea, right? And when we were there, I'm way off topic. When we were there, somebody did get lost and they found the person. So, anyways, and they were by themselves. So you don't have to. This market isn't hiking. You're not going to get lost, but you are going to run down different trails and accept that part.
Mhm.
Accept it. And like I think the most powerful thing with our talk today is, am I being creative or am I being analytical? Is this the science of it, or is this my creativity marketing? And then whichever you think it is, use that energy to get you to the next step, and that will stop you from doing what I do, which is trying to create during analytical times, which is a damn waste of time.
Yeah,
That's all I got
absolutely.
to say.
And yeah, exactly. I love that. And then it just made me think of like, lastly, I'll say this: allow the learning curve and be gentle on yourself. And the learning curve really is you knowing more today than you knew yesterday, you knowing more in the next moment than you knew, the last moment. So it's a learning curve, and you're gonna get it down. Just keep moving forward. And yeah, that's it. That's all we got. So, all right, Robert. Well, let's sign off and we will see everyone next time. Thanks for joining us.
Okay, goodbye, everybody.
Bye.